Guys, we're fucking live and in living primetime audio.
That's right.
This is super dope shit.
Today, we discuss live over the internet the most legendary, barbaric, spooky thing to ever exist. And I'm not just talking about the massive, raging penchant that we all have for the doc to have sex with the Sega Channel.
We'll get there one day in due time.
Oh my God. He'll do it.
Oh, he's going to do it.
And we're going to do it because this is The Undertaker. This week on Nothing Good.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
This is it. We made it. We've made it, gentlemen.
It's officially official. How I've always envisioned how we are when the theme song kicks in.
We're definitely not going to talk
Live
about
reaction
the
when the fucking beat drops.
So,
Yeah, it's a good thing just the audio is live and there's no visual content.
tonight's
So your neighbors are mortified, though.
tonight's a really special night because we're live tonight with you wonderful people. We're really excited for you guys to be here. Thank you for joining us and the dozens and dozens of you. But before we get to what is probably the most exciting subject we've covered for me personally so far, I want to take a moment, a really special moment here, and acknowledge something that our host, Mr. Brown, his birthday was yesterday.
Oh,
And
Big day. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
yeah,
thank
man.
you.
And,
Thank you.
And I speak on behalf of the three of us that we just appreciate the work you do for the show. This was your original concept, and without you, the show would not be a thing, and nor would it be as good as it is. So, with that being in mind, I wanted to raise a toast with a delicious can of Delirium, considered by experts, the world's greatest beer. It is my personal favorite beer of all time.
It says it right on the can. It's best beer in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
Best
you
beer
can't
in the
argue
world.
with that.
That's
Elected.
science. That's science.
Because there's never been anything fake about elections, right?
No, right?
Never.
Ever.
I will raise a toast to Noah J. Brown.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Salud.
Mm. Mm. Oh, that is.
It's really
so
good beer. It's really good.
That is good. So,
Getcha.
I appreciate the kind words, and we appreciate everyone listening right now to Nothing Good Live as we venture down this idea. We're doing a live show because we wanted to, and not because statistically our schedules would not allow us to keep pre-recording episodes and airing them in a time that was conducive to vacations and work schedules. Not at all.
No.
There's no reason to think that way. Why would you even bring it up?
It had nothing to do with anything like that whatsoever.
No. They're balancing all of that in a playoff hockey series. So here we are on this. It's actually, I'm not even lying, a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gorgeous day. And here in southwestern Pennsylvania, we haven't had many of those, but we're getting a couple in a row. And we're here to talk about the Deadman. And I wanted to make a theory of a Deadman joke, but the only thing shittier than a theory of a Deadman joke is theory of a Deadman. So here we are now. So I guess we should you want to fire it up, guys?
Yes.
Do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our first memories of The Undertaker.
Now, I did mention to Noah and Jeff, and I'm going to say it now that you're here, Mac. So we usually try to get all of our questions together ahead of time so we kind of know what we're going to talk about, kind of have a structure. But there's one question I left off the table that I wanted to pose to you guys to think about for the remainder of the show. And for the listeners, please do the same. Undertaker was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year.
Yes.
It's an incredibly big deal. Whether you liked him or you didn't like him, it was a really big deal on a lot of different levels. My question for you guys to think about and to answer at the end is, in your opinion, for you as a wrestling fan, lapsed or otherwise, what do you think will be or has been, or ideally across the scope of professional wrestling, the most important Hall of Fame induction ever?
Interesting.
Within, considering our lifetimes and what we've been watching, right? I mean, you can't like Austin Theory. No, probably not. But considering what we've watched a lot of wrestling between the four of us.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've watched a lot of Hall of Famers have careers.
Mhm.
So just don't answer. Let it percolate. Let it marinate. And think about who you think will be the most important, impactful, whether it's happened or not yet. Doesn't matter. Just what your opinion is.
I got really excited when you asked that question because I got an answer and then I got a better one.
Well, good.
So, and I really want to share it, but I'm not going
share
to.
it later.
I'm not going to.
You know what? It's going to change between.
It
now
may
and then.
change.
I don't think it will.
I already have my answer.
I don't think it will. And I have a funny fucking feeling that we're thinking of the same thing.
Potentially.
I just have a feeling because I know you,
We're gonna,
and you know I know you.
So good, so good. That's the first of many wrestling themed references I'm sure we'll get throughout the show. But speaking of holding it and waiting, so the cool thing about today's show that we are going to do, I promise, is we're going to go through our spiel. You know what? I'm going to go inside baseball. I'm going to go inside wrestling, and I'm going to let everyone know the run sheet for today and what's going to go on, when the next run-in is going to happen. So we do have a list of questions that we as hosts have prepared to talk about and debate and basically just jerk off over for an unknown period of time. And then after that list, we're going to then open it up to you, the sweet, sweet, juicy listeners. Some may be from Peru, though Peru did abandon us, and I
almost a year ago.
Probably not here.
I'm gonna file for custody of that love child. Some could be France.
I'm secretly flying a kite in Peru's front yard at 3:00 in the morning, just looking up the window, hoping they're looking back
Somewhere.
somewhere.
Are they looking at the same moon? Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's how I feel when I'm on Pornhub. It's just generally, are they looking at the same video as I am? You know, that's just a general question I have for a lot of people I know in my life. But anyway, we're going to open it up to you, the callers, the listeners, later in the show for you to share your favorite Undertaker oriented things, or just generally, depending on how many or few of you there are, whatever the hell you want to talk about.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. But let's get it started here. So what's your first memory, Mac? Your very first memory of The Undertaker?
So, and this is the God's honest truth. The Undertaker made me stop watching wrestling.
Go on.
Scared the absolute shit out of me. It did. Truth. Absolute truth. So as wrestling has its cycles. And I really kind of got introduced, like we all did, in the 80s with Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Rowdy Roddy Piper. The list goes on.
Yeah.
And that was a very definitive era of wrestling. Whether or not those wrestlers went on to do other things, a lot of them went on to do great things. Some of them went on to do nothing. But to me, the introduction of The Undertaker meant a shift in the era. That the quick rise of WWF was over. Yeah. That door closed because this guy came out. And I was terrified of him. It made me like, I can't watch this because I'm just too scared of what the fucking Undertaker was going to do or not do. He just he's mystical. He's magical. He has a casket. What the fuck is a pallbearer? And I honestly couldn't wrap my head around it. And I legitimately gave up on wrestling for a number of years because I just was not ready for that character.
It explains a lot about you.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And I think it's something that might come up. It kind of draws into attention that, Undertaker, Survivor Series 1990, right? Yep. For his debut in the WWF. But the character, I don't really think of him as a Hogan-era character. No. I think he kind of transcends every era.
It evolved quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously
found himself.
He wrestled Hogan, but he's wrestled every major player in wrestling. So when you think about that's a question for later. What era do you associate him with? But Jafar, what's your first memory of the day?
Yeah, so I don't clearly recall his debut, but the first thing that stuck out from memory was his first feud with the Warrior.
Yes.
And because, as Dave mentioned, he had all these supernatural powers, which was a big part of the gimmick at the time. So Warrior enlisted the help of Jake the Snake Roberts.
Trust me.
To go through all these tests, if you will, supernatural tests. Locking him in a casket, putting him in a pit with snakes, letting a snake bite him, all kinds of crazy shit. All leading up to a double cross, and Taker was in on the whole time. But so the first big match that stood out to me that I recall was when Warrior fought Undertaker at Madison Square Garden. In 91 in the first body bag match.
Yep.
And you knew Taker wasn't over yet. So Warrior was going to win no matter what. But at the end of the match, when Taker sat up in the body bag, that was it. Yeah. So I was completely sold on that. But that's the one moment that sticks out early in his career in terms of my first memory.
Yeah, I'm going to go, and I agree with you here, Jeff, is I don't necessarily I don't remember the first time I saw the Deadman at all. I was 8 years old when he debuted in the WWF. It was a long time ago, but I do remember the feeling he gave me. I wasn't one of those kids in the audience that cried because the kids were terrified of him.
For sure.
I fucking cried.
Dave was
no shade at you.
He's still crying.
I'm crying now.
It was more, for me, it was the music. It was the emotionless. He was so intimidating. I mean, he was so quick, and he didn't stop. No matter how many times you hit him, and punched him in the head, hit him, kicked him, body slam, he just sat right back up.
Yeah, it's
he was like Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, he didn't feel pain.
He was Mike Myers.
Yeah,
that was, and this is a conversation for later. But it just was such great casting. And, Mark Calloway being committed to that character and not, going, full speed ahead was so important because if he half-assed it, it would not have worked at all.
Yeah, I think 95% of wrestlers, if you were to pitch that gimmick to them, they would be absolutely not. I'm not going to do it.
They have no idea what to do. Yeah.
And he put all his chips on the table.
He was hungry.
All in. Yeah.
And he wanted, and Vince sold him on it, obviously. You're you're going to be invincible. You're going to be a corpse. And he did such a good job.
Yeah, you can't.
He was pale, but he rolled his eyes in the back of his head. Paul Bear, God, man, Percy Pringle, God love that man. Rest in peace. He did such a good. The whole ensemble was perfect.
The whole presentation
was perfect.
It was the eyes, right?
Yeah.
You focus in on the eyes. Almost, I swear to God, for the first 7 years, the Undertaker didn't blink.
No, he didn't.
Not on TV.
No.
Right. The makeup, just enough to bring it out. Obviously, Paul Bearer,
all makeup, yeah,
raw makeup. But as a child of the '80s, rocking my Thundercats, my Ninja Turtles, Transformers.
Yep.
When you see that guy, you're not ready for that.
No,
you're not. And I could not handle it for a number of years. He sold it right here. Just right in that 2-inch by 4-inch, right in the eyes.
Yeah, because typically that's where you sell most of your emotion, and when you have none, it's terrifying.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Always makes me think of that early clip of him as the head snap with the open eyes, right? Because that's just crazy. But for me personally, I do remember the debut at Survivor Series 90 because I was watching every Saturday morning avidly. And the one thing that they were hyping was not who Ted DiBiase's mystery man on his team was, but who was in that fucking egg that was throughout the Survivor Series. It was a giant egg. And I, being 5 ripe years old, was like, who's in the fucking egg, right? I want to know who's in the egg, who's in the egg. So I remember a lot of that. I remember even at 5 being disappointed that it was literally a turkey in that egg.
Gobbledygooker,
I
baby.
fucking forgot about that.
I never forgot about you.
Hector Guerrero. No. Hector Guerrero still makes appearances as a gobbledygooker.
Listen,
by the way.
What a terrible gimmick.
Oh my God.
Did I forget it, or did I conscious fucking bury that shit deep?
I hope you did.
No, it would be a bigger moment had that not been the debut of the Undertaker.
Right.
But and it was incredible. But think about the talent in the match because it was awesome. It was super awesome, and he was super scary. And they shot it upward every time when he walked out to make him look 25 feet tall, and everything.
Positioned it to make him look overly menacing.
Yes, but think about the talent in that match too. You had Ted on the heel side. Ted DiBiase, the honky tonk man, on the babyface side.
Wait, you just said talent.
What? The honky tonk man?
Honky tonk.
First of all, he is the greatest
No, he's
Intercontinental
not.
champion.
Oh my
The
God.
greatest.
Oh my God, here we
I know,
go.
you can tell we'll get there. But I mean, the ratings speak for themselves. The Saturday Night's Main Event. We'll argue about the honky tonk man, Wayne Ferris, another day.
Please, yes.
But another name, Bret the Hitman Hart was also in that match, which is real easy to forget, right?
Yeah.
That Bret Hart's in that match. Dusty Rhodes is in that match. Like, so they immediately put him with main event talent. He didn't come in as like the heater on a job squad team.
Yeah.
He's in there with guys that either were or would be main eventing WrestleManias.
And if you take a second to think about that matchup, what stands out? What isn't like everybody else?
Yeah.
Look, it don't get any more opposite between Undertaker and Dusty Rhodes.
No.
It does not get
No.
more polar opposite. And it was such, again, good booking, because you remembered that.
Yes.
Him just stalking people around the ring. I love the punch, and he just turns back and just keeps coming at you.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Didn't sell anything.
And to this day, I think Coco Beware is still pissed about the tombstone that ended that match. It is the most devastating tombstone in history. I mean, and they still say he's still falling at that point. But that was brutal. That was brutal. But I mean, that was memorable. I mean, to this day, around a quick thing, of all the most absurd, wrestling is absurd to begin with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's completely absurd to begin with. And then you add in the gimmicks of wrestling, which are super absurd. But of all these super absurd gimmicks, and this is pretty fucking absurd, a dead guy with magic powers who feels no pain and has some weird, Alabama guy following him around everywhere. Brother loved that time.
Right.
But has anybody in the history ever been given something so fucking absurd and nailed it so goddamn hard?
Yeah, talk about making something enormous out of something so minuscule. Because who would have ever thought that would have stuck?
30 years.
It was, part of the work ethic of Mark Calloway.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if I'm going to own it, I'm going to own it. And from year 1 to year 30, he continued to own it all the way through.
So, and now, speaking of that, he's been around for so long, but he had to evolve.
Yes.
Multiple times,
yeah,
actually.
it's got to change.
But it's so cool that he did. And not only did he evolve multiple times, he did it so well, and we were with it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whether you were a fan of his or not, you had to respect him.
Well,
Yes.
I when you mention that and you talk about the evolution and the changes of the character, the changes that he got for himself, the changes that he went with for the company and everything, it all works because of just how good Mark Calloway as a wrestler is, And if you don't have somebody who, when you strip away the gimmick, when you strip away all gimmicks, they're still wrestlers, if he wasn't a great fucking wrestler, it never would have worked anyway. Doesn't matter what kind of gimmick. I mean, we see that with certain guys today. If they don't have it, they're not going to make it.
It doesn't go beyond it.
The counter to that is The Miz. I don't know how well The Miz has ever had it, but he's so fucking good as a talker, and he's so good at selling his character that he will be in the Hall of Fame. Whether you like it or not, dear listeners, Mike The Miz Mizanin is destined for the WWE Hall of Fame one day.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can't deny that body of work. But you mentioned incarnations.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite, right? I'm just go right off the bat. Big Evil. God damn it.
I 100,000% agree with that. The most comfortable he's ever been.
And most importantly, I've been watching wrestling at that point for so long that, you get jaded. You kind of see through things. The curtain had been pulled back by the McMahon family, years prior. Yeah. There are no secrets really anymore as a wrestling fan. The internet ruined a lot of things.
Still does.
But it's hard for me still, even to this day, as a fan, to really get into a heel persona. It's easier for me to get into a babyface than it is a heel. But man, I fucking hated it. But not like a go away. I don't want to see you on TV, but I fucking hated how he was a piece of shit. He was a bully.
He was,
and he beat everybody up, and it was so believable because look at him.
Yeah,
those big old soup bones. Although we're going to ignore Michael Cole trying to get over the best pure striker in the WWE.
Which I'm going to say about 8 times. He
that
really
was go away.
And some of the matches we're going to talk about, that he said it 8 times a match, and it's come on.
They tried so hard to get that over, it never worked.
No, because you're trying to legitimize him against other people that are have more actual wrestling credentials. But still, I mean, what is a pure striker, right? Because there's like I don't
know what that means.
Like you have hands and they can move towards someone's face.
But like
that's purely striking.
Him turning heel on Jim Ross was the thing, right? Jim Ross is the holy grail. You don't turn heel on Jim Ross unless you really want to get the heat. And it was all about respect, and it made sense. Because it was, I think it was like about the Kiss My Ass Club, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you think you're too good for it? Yeah. Oh, yeah,
and he, like, just turned on Jim Ross, and it was like, this is The Undertaker.
Yeah.
This is who he wanted to be all this time.
All the time. And I'm going to back that up by saying, because the American Badass is closest, or the quote-unquote, all of the biker Undertaker gimmicks have been closer to the real Mark Calloway than a dead guy from Death Valley, right?
Yeah.
So he always felt more comfortable.
Wait, he wasn't from Death Valley?
No, I
think he's from Houston?
Yeah,
or somewhere in Texas?
Yeah, no, in Texas, No, I know.
Deep Texas, right? But
how deep?
Deep.
Real deep.
Oh, man.
So deep.
So deep.
So deep. Like 3 knuckles deep. But his American Badass, the first one that came back with Limp Bizkit and the Rollin', always came off to me as kind of like, and I mean no disrespect to the, I don't know how many people are listening, 8 people listening right now that might know someone who's a homeless Vietnam vet, but it came off like a homeless Vietnam vet, right? Like that,
it was the hair.
It's the hair and the long trench coat. Like he thinks he's more badass than he is, and he's just basically that's the Undertaker to me that would bang rats from a strip club.
So
right.
So Nick Nolte from Tropic Thunder.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bang rats from a strip club. Go decimate a Waffle House. Get 2.5 hours of sleep. And then bring it back up, then wash, rinse, repeat. But then when he turned Big Evil, he cut the hair. Mm-hmm. He got like real serious. And that was a strike. And it didn't last very long, but it was easily the most comfortable he's ever been. Because he didn't do anything other than show up as himself and fucking work.
And we pass this along to Jeff here, but I want to just top off this Big Evil talk with, and I have no shame in admitting this, I don't think Undertaker's a particularly great professional wrestler. The character for the first several years is what carried him. Mm-hmm. Right? But being Big Evil, being a bully, being seasoned at this stage in his career, he's still pretty young at this point. Mm-hmm. Being still injury prone, but fairly injury free. He had his absolute best matches I think he's ever had as Big Evil. Because it wasn't about no selling. It wasn't about sitting up. It wasn't about all that. It was about just brawling,
working,
getting in there, and being creative, and being a heel, being a bruiser heel. That it allowed him to work with people in a way that he couldn't do as the Deadman. Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think too, just to kind of tag along on your point there too, Jones, that the quality of wrestler that he had at that time during that gimmick, I think, also elevated his game because you're beyond that point in time of just the main 4, 5, 6 guys that were carrying from the mid to late 90s because you started having some of these smaller guys that he could work with that could really work. Kurt Angles and Rod Van Dam and Chris Jericho and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Besides just potentially Kane and an incarnation of Mick Foley, Austin, because also Rock's main event, Triple H. So you had just, I think, a perfect storm too of competitors that he got to work with. And when you hear any kind of like post-career interviews or things that he did near the end, where he's talking about like the guys he loved to work with, it was always those smaller guys.
Yeah, for sure. So Jafar, your favorite incarnation of the Deadman?
I'm right there with you guys, with Big Evil. I think that incarnation of the character is when he really hit his stride in terms of his comfort level with who he was, his comfort level on the mic, just him being a bully, like you mentioned. He's there were so many years where all he would say is "rest in peace."
Yeah.
Once he started talking, that's all he said for a long time.
Yeah.
But once he got to that persona of the character, you start to see sort of the evolution of where he was taking it, and it really solidified it. Not just as a heel, but to see that character arc from where he started just to that point, and then where it goes after that.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you guys.
Max?
For me, it is just kind of after that when he's the Phenom. When you've kind of the hybrid of the characters.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you guys. He absolutely did his best work in that stage when he was himself, and for a very long time. Mark Calloway struggled with the Undertaker because it was very opposite of who he is and who he wants to be. So once we kind of get past that, I like that we start to see the merging of what kind of carried him there and who he is.
Yeah.
And I not necessarily saying he did his best work at that time or anything. I just liked that that we had all the areas of Mark Calloway
Where they're represented.
where they're represented. And I just liked how that character I liked the look. I liked, obviously going back with the hat and trench coat and everything. So I just liked that version of the character.
I'm really glad you said that because easily, and some really cool Undertaker moments. I can't say that I've like a top 5 favorite Undertaker matches. There's like my favorite match he's ever had, but my favorite moment it's like kind of like a little bit of that storyline, right? So this man debuts as a corpse or whatever he was, resurrected, reanimated, whatever, right? And he was on
Frankenstein.
He was on that shit for years.
Yeah,
right.
Essentially.
He makes his way into like a weird satanic Lovecraftian worshiper of the old ones and all that.
Yeah.
Comes back as the Vietnam vet.
Yeah. Homeless Vietnam vet.
Shaves his head and becomes an absolute fucking badass, right? But he feuds with Vince McMahon, the owner of the company. Buried alive match. His fucking brother Kane, which is a whole other conversation, but his brother Kane, right, sneaks attacks him and buries him. Buries him alive. And for months, Undertaker's just gone. And then eventually, he fucking comes back as the Deadman. And at WrestleMania 20, he comes back wearing the exact same thing Kane buried him in. And listen, professional wrestling is scripted fucking television. I understand this. It's all storyline. But the goosebumps I got when he came back at WrestleMania 20 was such a moment. The match itself wasn't even that good. But it was like the deluded Kane, like no, you're not coming back. You're not real. You're not.
No.
And Paul Bearer comes back. The Druids come back. And when you heard the bell.
Yeah.
And that leads to, like, my favorite moment. But ultimately, WrestleMania 20, and it's still over.
Yeah.
It is such a fantastic character. Like sci-fi fantasy ain't real. There's nothing real about The Undertaker. But people still mark for it. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback on that because my favorite moment is very similar to that. Nearly identical. It just happened 10 years earlier when Yokozuna quote-unquote killed The Undertaker.
Crushed his face.
You see a flash of him up on the screen, and they're like, oh my God, The Undertaker's dead. And then he's just gone. And he's gone for
He ascended, though. He ascended up, though.
Yeah. So he's gone for like 8 months because he's out on injury. And they kept running the gimmick the whole time. They're like, people keep saying they see The Undertaker out back or in the rafters or whatever. And then 8 months later, he comes right back at it. And it's the return of the Deadman.
Yeah. Wasn't Leslie Nielsen looking for him?
Yeah.
I remember that.
If I may hop in here. So that happened at Royal Rumble 94 where Yokozuna had every heel on the show lock The Undertaker away in a casket. And then he ascended to the heaven in like the glowing green light and he said, I'll be back. And then he goes.
Yeah,
and then in June of 94, at the King of the Ring, the subtext throughout the whole show and the road up to it was Leslie Nielsen and the other dude from Naked Gun were looking for The Undertaker, which is the
amazing.
most 1994 thing you could
It wasn't
say.
OJ, was it?
No.
All right. Just make. Well, no, that was way past.
Here's what's
even
amazing.
WWE's not brash enough to pull that one off.
Had they run that angle 1 year earlier, OJ would not have been in the OJ situation. I bet you OJ would have been involved in that. But isn't that fun to think about? No, but I also gotta just before we keep moving on, I gotta also say it's the idea of that blend that he was able to do from that 20 in, because everyone knows it's a fucking work. It's wrestling, right? And we don't know. We want to suspend our disbelief. One of the coolest things I could ever explain to anybody is when we get to see The Undertaker come out live, right? Because the dry ice makes it look like he floats down the aisleway. And that is so badass. Like, it's such a touch that is lost to the person at home watching on screen, but you get to see all the purple and blue lights, and you're like, oh shit, that is badass. And when that dong goes off, everyone in the arena gets on their feet and goes crazy.
It's the first time you hear that bell, whether you're a kid or an adult, like, you feel it to your core,
right inside you.
because you know some shit's gonna happen.
Agreed.
But it's the idea that he has been able to blend parts of that gimmick with other parts of himself and stuff too. Like as that post WrestleMania 20 would go, when he would work. And this is at the rise of MMA at the time too. So he would go to the fingerless gloves, right, with the padding on it, like an MMA fighter. He used a variation of the triangle choke, which was an accident, but it stuck. And Shawn Michaels tapped out to it. It's like, oh shit, I guess I'm not using the triangle choke anymore. I'm doing the Hell's Gate finish. Yep. So he would work that shit in there. And I think it gets a lot of unnecessary flack because it was during the pandemic. But the last Ride match with AJ Styles that they had at WrestleMania, his last match, I liked that match for two reasons. One, because it was cinematic and it was different.
Production-wise.
And the character... Stellar. Absolutely, it's one gimmick in wrestling that you, maybe one or two, the other one was Bray Wyatt, right? That you could probably pull something like that off and it's not totally off the wall. But I love how casually the badass big evil he was to AJ that whole match. It's like, you wanted this. Where are you going? It's like beating a guy's ass in a parking lot. I'm like, I loved it.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, and I kind of figured we would talk about it at some point in time. But I had that match has a very special place in my heart, just because of what you said, Jeff. It is so cinematic, and for the character of the Undertaker, regardless of what you think of the wrestler or anything else, the character of the Undertaker will always be the thing that lasts.
Yeah,
you have to send it out.
Yeah,
with a big production. Yeah. It has to. And AJ Styles obviously is so fucking good.
He is. And
you can work that match. And there are parts of that match when I remember watching it, I'm like, this is even ridiculous for me, but
right?
Like it was just still so much fun.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Also too, at that point, we had witnessed the previous couple of matches with Taker. You had the one with Roman Reigns where we all kind of thought maybe you're saying one match too long.
You made me overstay it a little bit.
And then, you get to the John Cena match the next year where we think we all wanted at least 20 minutes of that and we didn't get it.
No, it was just a squash match.
Right. So, I think in terms of everything you're going to get for the proper send-off of that character, that was absolutely perfect. Like absolute perfection.
Yeah, 1,000%. And anyone that wasn't going to get hurt by it was AJ. At that point, right? Yeah. I mean, I liked it, but I know the face that our dear sweet listeners couldn't see of Doc. That face, like this motherfucker right here. Gonna talk about how much you like the last Ride match.
Look, I'm not trying to alienate anybody. I'm not down with that. I wasn't down with the Hardys doing that weird hybrid movie wrestling match.
The final business. Deletion.
Yeah, I think it's fucking strange. And it just, I watched that match, the last Ride match, and I felt the exact opposite, and I thought that was a terrible send-off.
Well, I mean...
That's just me, though.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the same thing, too. Vince McMahon and the Saudis have a lot of money. So if we think that's the last time he's going to ever chokeslam somebody, we're probably wrong. Right? But speaking of favorite things, favorite moments, right? So if you had to pinpoint, you mentioned the Undertaker and Yokozuna casket match, right? And the ascending to the heaven. But is there anything else? Is there any one specific, if we could pinpoint, not a match, but a moment of the Deadman that comes to your mind? Would your answer be WrestleMania 20 there, Doc?
Nah.
No?
Originally, when I really was sitting there thinking about this a week or so ago, I actually thought it was The Undertaker versus The Undertaker.
Oh my God!
Right, and,
Brian Lee.
Look, and this, I changed my mind, but just full disclosure, it's a stupid ass idea. However, it spoke to how unique a character is that The Undertaker was. That they even had the nerve to try to pull that off, and they pulled it off.
For a minute, yeah.
I mean, it was like look, they didn't have anybody fooled, but little kids though were buying this shit. Well, that was the point. That was the target audience.
If you had done it anywhere else but the Garden, I think it might have worked out better for you. Because Garden was going to eat that shit alive, no matter what you did, right?
Right. But, I mean, in terms of, it's not... You can't have Hulk Hogan versus the Hulk Hogan. They ain't going to work that way. Yeah. But the Deadman, it made sense. You could try to pull that off.
Yeah.
Because the character was just, again, fantastic enough to try something like that. But my favorite moment, or at least I would say not favorite moment, like most important moment, is actually the Hell in a Cell in '98, and not because the match was amazing, because it wasn't. Not because the match had tremendous psychology, it didn't. Because it set a standard that no one will ever surpass.
For good reason, too.
Because you might kill somebody.
Yeah.
But like that match, people always think about like the toss off the cell, which was a really big moment, but so much other stuff going on in that match.
The fucking finish with the thumbtack.
Thumbtack. Choke slam through the fucking cell. Right? Like there's so much. The idea that outside of dropping an Acme anvil on Mick Foley,
yeah,
I mean, you couldn't really do much.
That was next. That literally was next.
I think, but that's probably the most important match for I think wrestling in general, because again, it set a bar. Like the Hell in a Cell from the previous year was excellent,
which we'll talk about.
It was a really good match.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
For totally different reasons.
Yeah.
But that's like a little bit of like a standard. And then Mick Foley said, "Hold my fucking beer."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will never, and they will try, and they have tried, but they will never top that.
For good reason.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Jones is just reading my notes because right here I wrote most important or most impactful important moment, Taker versus Mankind, Hell in a Cell.
I mean, I only had it written down here too, man. Right?
Come on, man. That fucking match, whenever you think of quintessential Undertaker matches, and we're going to get into our favorite matches here in a little bit, but that was so iconic. Like, not necessarily the quality of the match, what happened in the match, just the way it went from start to finish, and how just over the top brutal it was, and how Mick Foley saying, "I'm going to take this bump. I'm not going to like it. It's end well, but I'm taking it, and we're doing it for the fans." And maybe it's because we're Yinzers and it happened here in our hometown.
It did happen here.
But I fucking love that match. It's so good.
Adds just to another one of the many regrets people have doing something with their body in Pittsburgh. You know, there's a lot of regrets. Can I say my favorite moment of that match? It's not my favorite Undertaker moment, but my favorite moment of that match is not the best moment or the most impactful. Obviously, him going off or through, or the fucking finish with the thumbtacks. But my favorite thing is when Mick Foley needed time. So they had everyone run in to help, and Terry Funk was there, and he's like, Mick, what can I do? Help you? And he's like, buy me time. And so Terry comes over, and they call the audible with the Undertaker for Terry Funk to get chokeslammed, but he fucking chokeslams it so much that his little white New Balances go flying off and goes down. And to this day, I will watch that match just to watch the New Balances kick off, or his Kmart equivalent of them, and watch Terry Funk take a random chokeslam up in the middle of that match. It is definitely important. Mac, what's your favorite Undertaker moment?
So it's when he crucified Stephanie McMahon up on the.
Good.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. It's actually Mankind versus Undertaker. I did want to throw the crucifixion up on there.
That was Vince's idea.
Of course it was.
Yeah, it was all a ruse.
So again, I'm right there with you guys because that. So first off, right, in that match, everything we've talked about the Undertaker has to play in for this match to happen. Mm-hmm. That he's the unstoppable force, he's the immovable object, he just keeps coming at you, right? If you were ever to believe that a wrestler would really try to kill a man, it's the Undertaker who would
try to kill
really do
man.
it. Checks out. We actually saw when Randy Orton and John Cena, when Randy Orton tried to blow up John Cena. We were there, right? That's the closest we've ever come to number two. Also, again, in Pittsburgh. Something about Pittsburgh makes wrestlers just want to kill each other when they're here.
Apparently.
We live here, we know.
Right. Number two, we saw, I believe, the limit of what a human could take that moment that Taker sent Mick flying off that cage. Mm-hmm. I think if you have that cage 3 feet higher, Mick Foley's probably paralyzed for the rest of his life. Or, some shit's never... I mean, Steph Durham didn't work again, but, I really believe that is the maximum of what you could put somebody through, and they still be able to kind of walk, right? But here's the thing about that match that got to me. Is it's not the choke slam on the tax, as brutal as it is, not the choke slam through the Hell in a Cell, not even throwing Mick off. It's Taker standing there.
Yes.
Mick is, JR painting the greatest picture.
For all intents and purposes,
Good
he's
God
dead.
Almighty!
Yeah. Oh my God, he killed him. He killed him. Right?
He's broken
So, and you're sitting there, like he fucking killed him. Like, did he really throw him off? Absolutely. But like Taker stands there. He doesn't move. He's just watching. And like that to me is the quintessence. They fucking rose the cage with him standing on it.
Yeah. They need to get the stretcher out
and
there.
He's just standing, emotionless.
It's menacing as hell.
It's menacing as hell.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what sold the entire match, was just his presence, watching what he did, and really showing no remorse for it.
I'm gonna give you a little of some context to that. I mean, you and I probably had this conversation.
Yeah, I think we have. I know where you're going with this.
Mick Foley's first book is spectacular. If you've never read it,
incredible.
Please read it.
You got it for me.
That sounds about right.
Yep.
I feel like that's something I would have done. So Mick Foley, having gone through the Hell in a Cell, poor man, had no recollection of the events of that match.
No.
I think after he was thrown off, if I recall correctly. And he just was on autopilot the rest of the match, which, considering he got thrown off at the beginning of the match and he was on autopilot the rest of the time, is pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. So, according to the book, I'm really paraphrasing here. I'm trying to remember all the little details, but he talks about how he didn't remember anything about the match, so he watched the match back. And he's like, taking it on, like, and he get thrown off. He's looking at the Undertaker, kind of like you said, and he went to the Undertaker. I don't know if it was that day or a day or two later, and he's like, hey, man, like, when you threw me off, what did you think? And Mick Foley's such a good writer. He goes, and what his next words chilled me to the bone. Stone face said to Mick Foley, I thought you were dead.
Yep.
When you're looking at him, looking down at Mick Foley, this man is thinking, I just killed him.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Shit.
That's hardcore.
Yeah. And you're showing nothing.
Yeah. I just killed a man.
How hard that would have to be.
No, and I think that's a lot, and it's to his credit. Because other people, like, how many wrestlers have we seen? Oh, he's great in there, right? But guy can't cut a promo to save his life, right? Because we can't get him to show emotion. This guy has to show no emotion anytime that he's doing anything. He can't be angry. You can't feel pain. You can't be sad. You can't be happy. But we need you to make money without showing a fucking emotion. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the best moment, the most important moment, and my favorite moment is the idea of the Hell in a Cell, but it is that shot of looking up at him from the floor up to the cell, and we know what's going through his mind now in the hindsight of it being 25 years later, right? But the idea that here's this guy that the commentator is screaming is dead, and at the top, very far away, is the fucking Deadman looking down at him like, oh, he bad. Oh, he's so bad. Yeah.
Completely isolated.
Yes.
Like, there's no more lonely island than you could possibly be than on top of that fucking cage in that arena around everybody.
Everyone doing what they can. You can't talk to anybody.
I have a look on my face like I just fucking, like, when I just drop something in the kitchen that I'm not supposed to drop. Like, I'm drying a bowl and it drops, like, oh my God, because I think the bowl's going to break. He did that to a fucking human being.
Blew his ass off.
And he's standing there like, don't show any emotion. You just fucking killed a guy on national television. They can't arrest me for this, can they?
And that speaks to the Undertaker because he's a wrestler's wrestler.
Exactly.
He didn't sell it. Mm-hmm. He did not sell it.
1,000%.
You know what I mean? And I don't know what that really says about him in the grand scheme of life. I mean, but it says something.
But think about all the times wrestlers have tried to get the Undertaker to break character and they couldn't. I mean, this is the same guy who some years later would be on the way to the Elimination Chamber and they would light him on fire. And he would just whip off the coat, smack himself a couple of times, and he is standing in the chamber pod sizzling. Sizzling. And they're like giving him water to pour on himself, and he worked the damn match.
Right.
Sizzling. So, like, what? How else can you put it back? That's a guy. It always reminds me of the story of Ving Rhames. This is a sidebar, but it's a great story.
Hey, we're doing pretty good.
We are.
That's the first one.
That's actually
first
really
one's impressive.
In the Dawn of the Dead remake, right? That Zack Snyder did.
When you lead off with fucking the Sega Channel, it kind of like sets the rest of the tone.
So we're going to focus up.
Yeah,
we got callers, so I'm sure we're not going to spend the last half of the show on topic whatsoever. But in the Dawn of the Dead remake, Ving Rhames had a scene where he was getting sewn up. And they had a prosthetic arm on him. And the actress who was sewing him up pierced his actual skin. and started sewing the real skin underneath. And
I did not know that.
Fucking no sold that
That was
shit.
Sarah Pauli.
Yeah. Marcellus Wallace ain't fucking cutting for anybody. So no. So that reminds me, like, every time I hear about, like,
I
yeah,
fucking like one.
That's right.
yes. So, what happened to that actor? Zed's dead, baby. So I guess what?
So next thing we want to talk about, we're going to get into our favorite matches here in a second, but one of the biggest storylines around the career of the Deadman is the streak.
Yes.
That started as a fluke, and then 10 wins in, they're like, oh shit, he won 10 years in a row at WrestleMania. Let's see how long we can get this going.
Yeah.
So what is everyone's thoughts on the streak? Jones, we'll start with you.
So, as far as to kind of backtrack just a hair, when it came to most important moments, it started the Undertaker versus the Undertaker, then it kind of transitioned to Lesnar breaking the streak, and then I went, "Fuck that noise!" It's got to be Hell in a Cell. But to me, there are two things that make the Undertaker really important. One, that he was so genuinely respected across multiple generations of wrestling, wrestlers in wrestling. And two, the streak. We have been fortunate, and I'm sure most of the listeners have been very fortunate enough to have witnessed the evolution of the streak, to go from Undertaker's 3-0, hey, to this motherfucker has won 20 times in a goddamn row, basically. Here, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Most guys haven't even been wrestling for 20 years.
Much less,
Or didn't last that long.
20 appearances.
Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to go back to an old episode, right? We're gonna call back to WrestleMania 18, and if I recall correctly, we discussed
Archives.
Available in the archives, ladies and gentlemen.
Great episode, by the way. It's
It is a good
I'm
episode.
sorry for that,
I'm not.
but it's good.
I'm not.
It was fun.
So in that episode, correct me if I'm wrong, we spoke about when WrestleMania kind of became, it's not about the matches, it's about the brand.
Yeah.
And I think I had said that I felt that match kind of started that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to backtrack because I'm allowed to fucking do that.
Yes.
And I think that Undertaker streak becoming a real thing created the brand. Because it got to a point, it didn't even matter. You wanted to see if it could be done.
Yeah, at that point, as it evolved, it was more about that's what puts asses in seats, as opposed to nobody really cared about the rest of the card, aside from title matches. That's it.
Yes.
They wanted to see who was Undertaker going to face, and is he going to keep it going?
And it became, and the first, I think, one of the first times I actively remember kind of thinking it was kind of cool that there was a streak was WrestleMania 17, I think, under Triple H. And it was because Triple H is a big deal back then. Could it be done? No, obviously it wasn't done. But it's really cool to watch something go from, oh, that's kind of a little footnote, oh, that's kind of like a little bit of trivia, to, oh, that's kind of a big deal, to it's now its own championship. He's the only professional wrestler in my lifetime to become a championship.
No, that's what I was going to say. That is how people are supposed to view a championship, is the streak. Want to see it defended. And that range of emotion that happened every year, but once we were all aware of what the streak was, that we'd all go through that, he's not going to break it. Then you're in the middle of the match, you're like, are they going to have him do it? And then there's that one moment match, oh, they're going to fucking have him do it. And then you're like, that's right. Yeah, that piece of shit couldn't do it. And then you go through the whole thing, right? Every single time. And then there's the guys you didn't want to see break it. No disrespect to Mark Henry, but I don't think there's anybody in the world that wanted to see Mark Henry break the streak. And then there's guys you wanted. They're like, if they gave it to Punk, I wouldn't be that upset about it, right?
I forgot about that.
Or is it the Michaels? Is it going to be the career? That kind of question. So yeah, for sure.
I like how you bring that point up, Jones, that the streak became its own Mania match, that it became its own title.
Yeah.
Because, the thing that, and we've had this conversation off show and even a little bit on show about WrestleMania in general. You and I have talked about this. You're a big fan of it being 2 nights. More wrestling, the merrier.
Yes.
I'm not. I want just the cream to rise to the top.
One night of spectacle.
Because, natural selection, if you only have the top 15 or 20 performers doing the show for 4 hours, you're going to get just the best matches, and that's going to create the real WrestleMania moments.
Which I appreciate.
And I don't like how WWE pushes, well, he's got to get his WrestleMania moment. You don't create a WrestleMania moment. It just fucking happens.
Yes.
Right? It's got to be organic.
Which is what the streak was.
Yes.
It really was organic. And the thing about the streak that I think is so impressive is that, again, before we've gotten to the point of 2 nights of WrestleMania where everybody has to get a fucking medal and go ahead and work, whether the matches are going to be good or not, whether you want to see the match or not. And a lot of times they're throwing the storylines together too quickly, blah, 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 right? But when WrestleMania was a 2.5, 3 hour show, and you only had the best 6 or 7 matches of the year happening,
it meant a little more.
Undertaker always was on that card.
Yeah.
To me, especially early, where you could easily have found where a lot of people weren't like this. You know, some of the best wrestlers of all time didn't work 6, 7, 8 WrestleManias in a row. Yeah. Didn't win WrestleMania 6, 7, 8 times in a row.
You're right.
But Undertaker always was. And that, to me, especially early on in the streak, before it became realized, before it became its own monster, was the fact that Mark Calloway and that character was so fucking good that he always was in the top 5. He was always going to be there and always work.
Protected.
Yeah. I pulled up the list of who all the losers in the streak were.
Yeah, I did that too when we were doing this.
And let's just put, for mindset purposes, look at sort of the transition of past Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, and the guys that were victim of the streak. So we have Snuka, Jake the Snake, Giant Gonzalez, King Kong Bundy, Diesel, Psycho Sid, Kane, Big Boss Man, Triple H 3 times, Ric Flair, A-Train and Big Show at the same time, Randy Orton, Mark Henry, Batista, Edge, Shawn Michaels twice, CM Punk, Bray Wyatt, Shane McMahon, John Cena, AJ Styles, all WrestleMania wins. And to lose to fucking Brock Lesnar.
That is the other.
I remember we were at Mac's house at the estate watching this match. And we typically get pretty rowdy on WrestleMania nights, as we do. And I remember we were all like so fired up about that match. And when it ended, it was silence. Noah got up and walked out of the fucking house.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those moments.
We're like, wait, like, was that a false finish?
It was shock.
That really just happened?
It was shock.
Yeah.
It was one of the most, and it was.
It was Batista and John Cena going over the rope at the same time.
Yeah. But
and Vince McMahon blowing up both quads trying to get into the ring. What the fuck is happening?
That's amazing. Right. I can't wait to cover that Royal Rumble one. But
it's going to be so
fucking good.
I can't either.
No, and I am one of those people that believes that not only should the streak have been broken, but it was the right guy to have broken the streak. But most importantly, because it was our championship, right? And we had gotten this unique thing that nobody planned on happening, but became this organic, amazing concept of wrestling that here is this guy who hasn't been beaten in this fake fucking business that they can have beat anyone but no one. And every time the Undertaker would wrestle someone at WrestleMania, you would suspend your disbelief more than any other time in your life that had been suspended. But the only thing better than that was the absolute shock moment that we got when it ended.
Yeah, talk about an overall reaction.
Yes, and the people in the crowd, they didn't play the fucking genius for them not to play Lesnar's music.
No.
Right? It was genius. I had goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, how dare they try, like, anyone who's like, they should never have broken the streak. It's like, how dare you deprive people of that moment?
Yeah.
It's an honest feeling and a wrestling that strives for real emotions.
And part of it is Mark Calloway's commitment to the business.
Yes.
Like, not just the character, but the business. I mean, he lived and breathed for the WWE. And so when Vince said,
it's time,
do you want to drop this to Lesnar? And he said, if that's what's best for business, let's do it. He didn't hesitate. You know, typically Vince is like, you're going to fucking drop this match.
I don't fucking
But
care.
there was this level of respect between those two. And they're, you know, if you watch the Hall of Fame induction, like, obviously they're long time and very close friends, but there's this level of respect because of his commitment to the business and the respect that he had in the locker room because he was such a leader.
Yeah.
And he was such like a player's coach. to the guys in the back, that it commanded respect in both directions. And, yes, there was a time for him to drop the streak. Was that the right one? Probably, in hindsight. But the fucking moment that it created,
well, live forever.
It's unforgettable.
Yes.
So as you mentioned that, right? Because again, who ended the streak is as important as the streak itself.
Yes.
Right? And, I look at this in a weird way like the end of Game of Thrones. For years, because that show had to go on a hiatus to do the last couple seasons, every fucking fanboy in the world sat around and came up with their own ending to that show.
Yep.
What's going to happen? And then everybody debated it.
Yep.
And it became this huge thing for like 2 years. And then we got an ending to that show that pissed everybody the fuck off because it was the one ending nobody thought about.
Yes, they booked it in their heads.
And whether or not I agree with how the show ended, I do give respect to the writers of the show for giving people the thing, because that's what the entire show is based on. We're giving you what you're not expecting. We're going to break all the rules. And then the way they ended the show is the same thing. With the Undertaker streak, it's the same thing. Why Brock Lesnar? He doesn't need it.
No, he really didn't need it.
But in the grand scheme, too, he kind of did.
I'm going to back you up on that one. See, the idea is Lesnar as a Hall of Fame character, as a legitimate badass, didn't need it, right? But in the idea of what they have done with it and what anyone else, if let's say it was Punk, and I'm a big CM Punk fan, right? But let's say Punk beats the Undertaker the year before, right? And now Punk is the guy that ends the streak, and they put it off. Could you have seen that with the physical build and the look of Punk, that they would have based the next 6 WrestleManias? No, they wouldn't have based the next 6, 7, 8 WrestleManias around him because it's Punk, and he would have snarkily talked his ass off about it. But the fact that Brock Lesnar, who was already, as we have famously quoted, a bear in a person suit, right?
With a dick tattoo on his chest.
With a giant dick tattoo.
He has a giant dick tattoo.
And nobody will fucking tell him about that.
Anything.
He'll make you suck that dick tattoo.
I have.
Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" And I just think I can't say dick tattoo, but I'm just worried he's here. But the idea
he's cucking you in the fucking corner, just watching you sleep.
Every Mania since he broke the streak, Lesnar's been in the main event every year, every single year, and so they've gotten their money out of this. And think about the guys that they were never going to have Seth Rollins beat the Undertaker at WrestleMania. But they had Seth Rollins beat Brock Lesnar. They had Roman Reigns beat Brock Lesnar. They definitely didn't have Dean Ambrose beat Brock Lesnar, but they had a bunch of people go against Lesnar to kind of continue that thing. And to this day, it doesn't matter if he's fucking wearing Jimmy Jong sausage shorts or if he's in a fucking overalls. That music hits. Brock Lesnar hops out, and you're like, that's a legitimate badass. Yeah. And in part because for all of us who knew him as the next big thing or the UFC fighter, fans today know him as the fucking giant guy that beat the streak. And there you are. And so I feel like in a lot of ways it was the absolute perfect goal because for the next 10 years, Lesnar can keep putting people over.
And Lesnar in himself is a spectacle.
Yes.
And wrestling, as we know, especially WWE, always loves the spectacle.
He's a spectacle without a gimmick.
Right. Yeah.
He's a spectacle with testicles.
Right.
So how I feel about the streak being broken, I was waiting for somebody to break, Jeff.
Shit.
Is I feel very strongly that Brock did not need that win. I think Brock was officially a bad motherfucker before that.
Long before that.
It had been clearly established as such before that. But I will agree in that they got their money's worth out of that. Sure. But he could have easily been in the main event 10 years, plus without it and still been just as effective and just as intimidating. I argue that nobody was ready to beat the streak. No one really.
It's a good argument.
I mean, look, I think the importance of the streak and Undertaker retiring with it, I think would have really helped. Did he really need it to solidify him? Maybe not. But I think it would have been so cool to retire with that title.
Yeah, if you think about the sort of the pedestal that would have put him on.
Because
in a league
imagine
of his own.
Because imagine it's like we all kind of know they can build like this is his last match ever, and it's at WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
they
is
put him
he gonna
against somebody
win?
like Brock Lesnar, and Brock doesn't beat the fucking streak. That moment with the Undertaker getting his arms raised would have been that is a WrestleMania moment, ending his career with the streak intact. I think that would have been a good nod for him.
Yeah. I like it, but I like wrestling is so big, right? And it's always so. I mean, what happened later that night, right? Daniel Bryan wins the World Heavyweight Championship, and 75,000 people were screaming yes.
Yes.
We in your living room, Matt, were chanting yes.
It was great.
Yeah, it's excellent, right? And so it's all about the big babyface moment. I just personally like that here's one moment that is clearly a fucking tragedy. Like, it is the red wedding of wrestling.
Yeah.
The streak being
It's like the Thanos snap.
yes.
Like,
And
it doesn't
man.
feel good,
But you know what?
it's important for the story.
I don't
Yes.
think about it.
All right.
It's like it didn't even happen. So to me, and I guess, again, this is all from the consumer perspective as a wrestling fan, the streak ended. What was it worth then? What good does that actually do Brock Lesnar?
I mean,
Because most people, I feel, and I'm just generalizing, obviously, how could I know? I feel most people are like, fuck that. That was stupid booking. Again, I just feel like it didn't help Brock any more than he was already solidified,
over.
certified badass.
If
I'll give you
there's-
that.
He didn't make him a god.
I mean, so Brock and Taker do have a relationship.
Yeah.
I think if there was anybody to beat the streak too, I'm sure Taker's happy it was Brock.
Oh, absolutely.
In
I'm
a
sure
way.
he is.
Yeah.
And more
For sure.
happy it wasn't
I mean-
Shawn Michaels.
yes.
Wow.
They elevated each other a lot in that first draft split too, which we'll talk about here in a minute. For sure, we can argue more when we cover WrestleMania 30, which has to happen at some point. Let's argue extensively when it's long. We give it 5 years of this podcast, and it'll cross our threshold when we talk about WrestleMania 30.
Real quick, before we move on from this topic, because I know we want to, we're talking about Brock ending the streak.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about Roman defeating Taker? It's not a part of the streak, but it is a part of the streak. Because if Brock is just the one in 20 blank and 1, Roman defeats Taker.
Yeah.
Are we getting the same runway with Roman beating Taker like we have with Brock beating Taker?
Absolutely not.
It has not been the same, right?
No, and I think that people resented it. I think Lesnar worked as a shock moment because nobody even. And here's the thing: no one wanted to see it.
No one wanted to see
No one wanted to see
Yeah.
it. But when it happened, you were stuck with it, right? And you're like, and everyone. I walked out of the house. Everyone just sat in silence.
That's how Stephanie feels about me naked.
Oh,
Nobody wants to see it, but once she did, she's stuck with it.
Yes, but well,
Love you, baby.
there it is. But where it is with Roman beating
She
beating
might
the
go
Undertaker
listening.
2 years later, right? I think it was everyone was so against the Roman push at that time, and the match just didn't pan out the way they wanted it to. That you knew there was very little chance the Undertaker was going to beat Roman Reigns in that match, and so it was like seeing this come from a long way off, and it didn't make it any better.
Yeah,
when
because
it
I
happened.
mean, you for those number of years, you saw Taker was getting less and less ring time.
Yeah.
And the ring time he was getting, you could see he was a little rusty, and Roman was rising quickly. I mean, it was a little one sided. It made sense for him to lose that match.
Yeah, but then again, too, you could have asked yourself, did the match even need to have happened?
It didn't.
No, because I don't think Roman was more over for beating the Undertaker in the main event of WrestleMania than it would have been.
Another
before.
one on the list.
So I got sidebar number 2 here.
Oh, please do.
Because I was watching a portion of SmackDown. And Roman Reigns was on, with the Usos and everything. And I'm like, I've been a big fan of this Roman Reigns heel deal.
Since the start.
And it's just so good.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's excellent.
And I had this moment of clarity. As I'm assuming Hollywood does not snatch that man up. Because it very well could
Rumors
happen.
are that it's happening. Yeah.
That's about right.
He's going to be not on SmackDown all summer because he's filming
Of course he
something.
fucking is. Well, I was going to say, for that information, that you imagine, because he's still pretty fucking young, you imagine as he gets a little older, starts to gray a little bit in that beard, the fucking tribal chief look really comes in, and he retains that gimmick, that that seasoned vet. Now he's just a seasoned veteran. He really isn't yet. Not really.
No,
he's still proving himself.
He's about at the Undertaker.
He's a bad dude.
He's at the Undertaker was around Big Evil time.
Yeah. But now imagine just transition to that stage where like it's like when he says it's his when he says it's his kingdom, he says it's his world.
Yeah.
You believe.
Yeah, you've earned it.
And I just think it's really cool to watch that man's career kind of transition the way it has, and finally they got it right with him.
And to come back after his health scares.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
to come back so strong.
It's so interesting.
It's respectable for sure.
It's so interesting because when he went away for having a second bout with leukemia, you realize no one's going to ever boo that man again because of that. And then they turn around and say, you know what? We're going to make him heel. So you have to boo him. And it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's good storytelling.
Sure. So, but one last thing, though. It's the one thing I like about that Roman Reigns Undertaker match at WrestleMania. Do you guys remember the next night on Raw afterward? So they call him out to open the show. Roman Reigns does. And the fans, post-Raw, after Mania, won't let him talk. So it goes on. It's like the anti-Hogan thing after WrestleMania 18 where they just wouldn't let him speak because they were cheering too loud. They booed him. And every time he got the mic up to his mouth, they booed him out of the business. And to the second, he's took him for a second. It's like 9 minutes of booing. He goes, it's my yard now. And he dropped it, and the place goes crazy. That just should have fucking started right there.
Yeah.
Like, get it. Yeah. That was the guy that we're seeing
awesome.
now that we should
Slowly but sure, acknowledge me has gotten over for me.
For sure.
I love it.
It was annoying as shit at first.
I like it, though.
You know what? I like it. I like it.
Dude, that
You got your seat at the table.
Yeah.
So, did you guys see future Hall of Fame or future WWE champion? Oh, God damn it! Why am I?
Way to interrupt the momentum with that.
I know. Because I just want to call him RK Bro, but
Riddle.
Thank you. It's just my brain fucking farting. Like it's not RK Bro, but when they did that thing at the end of Raw the other night, when they just were fucking around and just going acknowledge.
That's right.
I thought that was great with him and Orton and Drew McIntyre antagonizing the bloodline coming out. I just thought that, and I'm watching it and I'm saying to myself, fucking Riddle, no fucking elbow pads, no knee pads, no boots.
The shit out of
is one day going to be the number one fucking guy in WWE. It is going to happen.
I'm gonna go hard disagree on that.
It's going to happen.
I don't see that happening.
It's going to happen.
No.
First of all, you don't disrespect the good goddamn name of Prince Ikea. Okay, first of all, you're allowed to. I can't wait. God, dear sweet listeners who we haven't acknowledged and sometimes we've been babbling, I swear to God, I can't wait till we get into WCW in the fall. Because Prince Ikea is like, when I remember, I'm like, shit. And I put him on the bottom tier of my 90s Attitude Era wrestlers. But when you realize that in 90s WCW, he was mid-tier, there's a lot of good shit and terrible shit that goes on.
Some great matches with William Regal, if I remember correctly.
Dude, there's some actually good stuff with Jericho. IKEA that he called him. It was great. No, but Riddle and Orton right now really reminds me a lot of the Attitude Era with like their kind of back and forth banter promos. So good shit. But let's focus up to get to the good shit. Let's all discuss our favorite Undertaker match.
This was my favorite part of this podcast.
Yes.
This because I had so much fun watching these matches again. Having a specific reason to watch them.
Yeah, because it's one thing when we go back and watch a whole pay-per-view, because there's a lot of like shit you got to get through to get like to the meat. But for this, because we told each other in advance what our favorite matches were, it was really fun to see how closely aligned they all are in terms of opponents.
Yeah.
But also to go back and see like, these are some good fucking matches.
The thing that I loved about it is that every match that we picked was different.
Yeah.
And it was a different version of how The Undertaker worked. It was a different kind of match. And it showed the versatility that Mark Calloway has and his ability to fucking tell a match and tell a story within every match. And I also like that of all you motherfuckers, I'm the other one to pick the match he won.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
listen,
but that also says a lot about him.
A great wrestler knows how to lose.
Fucking right. Yes.
That's how you put guys
absolutely.
Over.
Very true.
And Calloway was the king of putting guys over.
And so many. We just got done rambling about a bunch of them. So who wants to start this one? Now, before we go, dear sweet sexual listeners, this is the time that you should pay attention, because if you haven't seen any of the matches, we'll say this ahead of time. If you haven't seen any of the matches that we're about to list, you need to treat yourself. When this podcast is over, load up the Peacock, load up the WWE Network, load up YouTube, and fucking find them, because every single thing we talk about is going to be worth your time.
Hearing you say load up the Peacock.
Oh, I have to emphasize.
Gets me excited.
Peacock.
Yeah. Excited. Yeah.
I'm super excited. Excited.
Emphasis on the
Peacock.
Yeah.
Peacock.
Yeah.
The censors here on our live pod. Thank you very much to Podbean for hosting us here today. But the censors that like to skim through Podbean won't censor that word if I say peacock.
Oh.
Because it's a bird.
It's a channel.
Okay.
And a bird.
And a bird.
It is.
What does... What?
I was thinking of old Howard Stern bits as you said that, because of different ways they were to get around the censors by saying certain shit.
This is the first time
Yeah.
we have a chat feature with some listeners in our chat right now. And so what I would like to very much do is encourage our listeners to answer this question. What is the sex organ of a male peacock? Is it a peacock cock? Who knows? We'll check in back with you after our favorite Undertaker matches. Who wants to go first?
What noise does a peacock make at the point of climax?
I don't know.
Oh.
Probably sounds like a pigeon.
Oh.
We all know what that sounds like. For
Also-
better or worse.
Also in the archives.
I know at least one listener who does not know the sound a pigeon makes at climax.
Yet.
Yet.
A cockpea.
There's a cockpea.
Okay.
A cockpea.
All right.
I like it.
Chat has answered. A
Chat-
cockpea.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this thing.
So I guess I'll go.
Go for it.
So my favorite Undertaker match, and again, preface that I don't love Undertaker matches typically. I like the character more than I like his matches typically.
Yeah.
But Undertaker versus The Rock versus Kurt Angle, Vengeance 2002.
So good.
That's the one, with the exception of Hell in a Cell 98. This is the Undertaker match I've watched the most in my adult life. Because it's just good. All across the board. It's an excellent triple threat match. Everybody gets their shit in, and everybody looks good. But, like, we're talking... Undertaker is, like, he's really into the big evil thing now. He's, like, really fully transitioned to a heel.
He's champion.
And he's beating the shit out of people. I love it. Rock is white hot. He's over like Rover. There is no question the superstardom of the people's champ. But more importantly than all that, Kurt Angle is right there. He's just
How he
transitioned.
fit into that was impressive.
Yeah,
So
he
good.
is transitioned now to the wrestling machine.
Yes.
And look, I forget the fact that he's from Pittsburgh. I could care less about that. Kurt Angle is one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
It's true.
There
It's
is
damn true.
From Pittsburgh.
There-
Kurt Angle's from over the fucking hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Again,
close to where we're
forget
filming
all
this.
that.
Yeah.
What matters to me is that this man, I have never seen one human being do what he does in the ring so effortlessly. Well, no, that's a lie. Actually, I'm going to put him in a category. You guys will appreciate this. There are some wrestlers, and I hope that the audience here can vibe with this, but there are some wrestlers who, like, you could, like, it doesn't look like they're trying.
Yes.
Like, it looks like they were born taking bumps.
Yep.
Right? Barry Windham is a guy who made it look fucking effortless.
Oh, dude.
That's a good
Bobby
call.
Eaton is a guy who made it look fucking effortless. And for all his controversies and his demons, Dustin Rhodes, he's really fucking smooth in
Still
the
my
ring.
favorite person ever hit the ropes. Like, he doesn't even look like I don't know how everyone
I
else is
feel
learning to
like-
do it, but he's so
I
good.
know that I, growing up, did not give that man the respect that... I didn't put respect on his fucking name the way I should have. Because the gimmick got in the way. And it sucks that the gimmick got in
And he
the
was
way.
so good at the gimmick.
But at his age, he's still fucking smooth as silk
Yes.
in the ring. The point is, Kurt Angle is an rarefied air in terms of his ability to perform, to do things that, for his size, Kurt Angle could wrestle anybody. He could adapt to anybody. He could adapt to any style. He could brawl. He could be technical. He could jump off the top rope and not look awkward.
No, like a spawn.
Very few wrestlers, top wrestlers, can do that. But I just want to give that man his flowers a little bit. But this match, sweet Jesus, it's so good. And like, Rock's not an amazing professional wrestler. He's a great sports entertainer.
Nobody will ever say
Facts.
that he's
100%
But
facts.
all three of these
Beautiful.
guys gelled so well in this
Everyone knew
match.
what they were doing.
No, so real quick though, if you think about like the biggest name wrestlers of all time, you're never going to look at Austin, Rock, Hogan, even fucking Andre the Giant as saying they're great fucking professional wrestlers.
Great personalities.
Great personalities, fucking nailed the gimmick. Good wrestlers, sometimes even above average wrestlers, but you're not going to put them in the same conversation as Bret Hart.
No.
You're not putting them in the same conversation as Kurt Angle.
No.
You're not putting them in the same conversation as Chris Jericho.
Nope.
Greatest
right?
Intercontinental champion of all time, Honky Tonk Man.
Honky Tonk Man, absolutely. Give him his flowers.
Oh,
right?
get the hell out of here. No one thinks
I don't think that.
Look, there
because he said that, I brought it back up.
There was a time when you could make the argument based off of the sheer longest reign of all time. But here's the thing.
That's
a stat. But since then, we've had several people who are better in front of the champions. I still will say it.
Jones, it's closing time at the bar. All right, you've had a whole bunch. We're gonna rewind here. You know, good 3-4 years before Allie came into the picture, and the lights are starting to come up on the bar. You got to make a decision. It's time to go home with somebody. On one side, you got the Honky Tonk Man sitting there strumming his guitar. On the other side, Noah, take it.
On the other side, looking at you in such a way that can only be described as both aggressive and primal. At the edge of the stool is the Sega Channel.
How the fuck did we get here?
And the Sega Channel is wearing a denim jacket.
It is.
It's wearing a fucking sweet denim jacket. And when you look over, you're looking at the Honky Tonk Man, and God, I know how you feel about Wayne Ferris. He doesn't want to look at you either. He's probably trying to bang the Sega Channel. Are you going to let the Honky Tonk Man fuck the Sega Channel? Or are you going to step in? Are you going to do what needs to be done? Or are you going to step up and go straight 3 knuckles deep on that most sacred of 90s video game accessories? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Don't answer. Don't answer. We'll come back to this. Let it muster. Let it muster up. That triple threat match, though.
Yeah, good, huh? What did you guys think of that match?
So I love the pace of the match. You know, I'm one of the things about WWE that I really enjoy is that, you know, regardless of what they're trying to do, there's always a typical pace to the match. You try to let the storytelling kind of, you know, have its place. You give the wrestlers time. You know, you work on the bad knee. You know, you work on the elbow. You're telling a story in the ring about what's happening here. This match, though, with those 3 guys at this time was, of the 4 matches we watched, was easily the fastest of the 4 matches.
Oh, God, yeah.
I love the pacing of it.
They fucking, all 3 of them went. And in terms of Taker, where you're used to him being methodical, being very purposeful, being very slow, because that's his thing, right? Undertaker is fucking Jason Voorhees and Mike Myers from the 1980s from horror movies. Like, no matter how fast you fucking run, you turn around, they're still behind you, just slowly walking, right? Mm-hmm. But this isn't that, right? Taker has to fucking amp up. He's got to level up because Rocky's going to go, and fucking Kurt Angle is absolutely going to go.
Well, yeah, no, there's a sense of urgency in this match that I fucking adore. And this is also something I haven't poured out my notes the entire time because we're talking about The Undertaker. But the thing I wanted to absolutely say is this is the first incredible triple threat match in WWE history.
I think so.
The most memorable one.
Yeah, absolutely. Before then, they had tooled around the idea. Famously, the most memorable one before that multi-man match was the Fatal 4-Way Elimination at WrestleMania 2016. Yeah, and it was good. It's fine. But the WWE typically didn't do multi-man matches, especially in big things, because they didn't trust the competitors enough.
It was hard to sell it.
There's a lot of moving parts, and so you got to trust every single person. But the idea that all 3 guys had their perks as to why, because the Deadman was one big move away from putting you down. Yep. And Kurt Angle was, if he got a hold of you, you were toast. And The Rock was just explosive. And I love that's how they sold it. It's like he doesn't do much, but he can, out of nowhere, The Rock can do it, which eventually, spoiler, he fucking does.
I actually kind of thought that was interesting in that match, too, that Rock was kind of out of it for as long as he was.
Yeah.
He was out of the ring and everything.
It was a lot of one-on-one with Taker and Angle.
Which you could tell that they had the 2 guys that had the utmost respect for each other when they were in there working, because there's no reason. And Kurt Angle, first of all, is an Olympic goddamn gold medalist. So, also, if he wants you to bump, you're going to bump.
Neck.
Yes,
with a broken freaking neck.
Yes. Sorry. So, but here's the thing: if he wants you to bump, you're going to bump, right? You're going down. And the Undertaker, if he wants you to bump, you're going to bump, right? But these two
And
guys,
if you want him to bump, he's not going to.
no, hey, no, not a chance. So the idea that these two are like, how about we just call it down the middle and bump for each other? I'm still working on this guy right here, taking it the delirium. Doc just pointed and wanted to know why I'm still drinking my first beer, and it's because I don't haven't drank that often because we haven't recorded the podcast in a bit, and this thing is currently kicking my ass, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself as we get the event going here. But I want to use that as a segue. I love this match, and I love this match. I love everything about this match. Best triple threat match, but that's why my favorite match is The Undertaker versus Kurt Angle at No Way Out 2006. This is probably the most under the radar of the matches we took because it's the go home pay per view before WrestleMania. But this serves so many great moments because this was when Kurt Angle was in his absolute stride at the end of his WWE run. He could literally have wrestled a bus and made the bus look good, not a broom. Like a bus full of brooms, rather.
A broom full of buses?
Either one, man. I don't know how you fucking get it in there.
That's a visual.
How about that for a triple
It's your
threat
dick in a
match?
book, and you're booking a dick.
Yes.
It hurts so good.
What's important is that you're not only
Sometimes
having.
you learn something.
I was going to say it's not important with that analogy that there's a lot of books to promote literacy, but also an equal amount of dicks. And I appreciate that you've taken that stance. But no, Kurt Angle and The Undertaker. And what I love about that match is the idea The Undertaker takes no bones about, I'm going to work a completely different wrestling match than I've ever worked on pay-per-view. In this match, he's like, I'm in here with Kurt Angle. I could Deadman this. We could have the same match we had at Survivor Series 1999 or we had like on SmackDown in 2004. It's like, nah, let's fucking wrestle. And so they did.
Yeah.
You know, Taker often says that one of his favorite people to work with of all time is Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm.
And he and also too when I made sure to rewatch The Last Ride even before doing this, just kind of get like pumped up, you know. And there is an awful lot of how much Taker really appreciated Angle. Angle took the Taker kind of took Angle under his wing. You know, they had a great relationship, you know, off in the ring, out of the ring. But again, kind of shifting how, because the thing I loved about this again, every match is so different.
Mm-hmm.
This became like the fucking ankle lock match to me.
Yeah.
Right? Just how many times Angle put that fucking ankle lock on Taker to get him to submit. And just how in that match, you know, again, with Rock and Angle, it's really fast. This isn't that way. I mean, it's almost grinding to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they're kind of telling the story in this match that I think is extremely unique to what we had, you know, been looking at here.
Yeah, I'd mentioned to Noah before the show started, and we were kind of briefly talking about the matches that we had chosen. And I told him, like, you know, I'm pretty confident. I know I'd never seen this match before. And I'm so glad that I got a chance to watch it. Of all the matches that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about tonight, if there's one, honestly, that I really recommend anybody listening to watch is that match. And I wrote in my notes very specifically, the last 10 minutes of this match is some of the best wrestling Undertaker has ever done.
Yes.
And I was so totally floored with how good and how, like, you know, and the announcer was telling the ankle lock and because there's a fine line here, right? Because I'm sitting and watching this. I'm like, look, if he puts this on one too many times, it's like, it loses its value, right? It's just the right amount of times, selling it the right way.
The right
Will
way.
the Undertaker tap? Is it gonna happen? Will he submit? Undertaker doesn't tap out. He doesn't give up. He's the toughest man. It was just such a good story. The match was fucking excellent. I don't believe in star systems and all that shit, but if I was gonna give any match a 5-star, that match is a 5-star match. And you know, just real quick. And it sort of kind of goes to like the legacy of The Undertaker. But I'm just going to real quick, just because I'm feeling it. One of the things that I think you have to appreciate about the man, the professional of The Undertaker, is that he was generous when he didn't have to be. Like, he really didn't have to be generous with so many different people to make them look good. Because you reach a certain stage in any profession, whatever you're doing, where you kind of like, you're smelling yourself, you feel like you are the top of whatever it is you do, You don't have to be generous to the people underneath you or parallel to you. But The Undertaker is a goddamn pro.
Yeah.
You know, and he was generous with his knowledge, his time, and in the fucking ring, making, 2002, the match I chose, Angle was just a few years really in. And while though he was excellent, he was a prodigy, he didn't have to make him look as good as he did.
Yeah.
But the match would have suffered if he didn't. But I digress.
Yeah, one thing I love about both of those matches in particular, and one thing I love about The Undertaker is, you always see like these like Clash of the Giant type matches, like when it's Undertaker and Kane, or Undertaker and Diesel, or Undertaker and Psycho Sid, or the Yeti at fucking Halloween Havoc.
Don't invoke his name.
Like when you have two wrestlers of the same style, when it's two big guys, it's not very exciting. It's pretty lackluster.
Yeah.
When you have two super technical guys, yeah, it's interesting, but it's also like too technical to a point.
Almost to a point. It's too
the one thing that The Undertaker is so good at is these matches of conflicting styles.
Yeah.
Like, yes, technically he's a good wrestler, not a great wrestler, as Jones alluded to earlier.
Yelling at him.
But you have somebody so technically perfectionist like Kurt Angle, and to see the way that they're able to play off each other, even though they're, one's quick and nimble, one's big and slow, but the way that they're able to dance in the ring and to tell a story, it's fucking fantastic. And there's certain guys that it's consistent. It's Angle, it's Triple H, it's Shawn Michaels, who we're going to talk about here in a second, which leads me into my favorite Undertaker match, which is Bad Blood 97, the very first Hell in a Cell match.
Which is obviously
Shawn Michaels.
a Shawn Michaels match that is not my favorite Undertaker-Shawn Michaels
This is
match.
true. We'll get to that here in a few minutes.
Oh, my God. The Hell in a Cell match.
The first Hell in a Cell match, Shawn Michaels has just turned heel.
Yep.
He cost Undertaker a match.
We've covered it in our archives.
Pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they go into this match.
Like the sound of that.
Shawn Michaels. For those listeners who have joined us, Noah's nursing his beer over there, but the rest of us have cracked into our second beer. And because it's a wrestling show, and because we're fucking live, we are drinking a Stone Cold Steve Austin Broken Skull American Lager.
Goddamn fucking right.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh,
That's
hell
the
yeah.
bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
I want to point out that we have not mentioned that of the four of us, I'm the only one who fucking showed up in character. I've got my fucking Texas shirt on.
Questionable at best.
It's the best I could do. All right, fuck you. All right, and I got the do-rag on for the fucking Deadman, right? Deadman Incorporated, right?
Appreciate that.
So
I was wondering what the fuck you were doing when you were putting a bandana on as I'm doing the intro.
acting. I'm getting in the fucking mood, man.
All right.
I'm representing Taker from 2000 to 2004.
Yeah. So anyways, back to Taker in 97 at Bad Blood. So first Hell in a Cell match.
I love it.
Taker is fucking angry.
Oh,
and
dude.
he is just beating the shit out of Shawn Michaels.
And he
for
means
the first 15 minutes. It's a long match. It's a 40-minute match.
Oh my God, it's a 40-minute match.
Which is typically long for an Undertaker match. And it's one-sided for the first.
And it's not like Mick Foley Hell in the Cell where Taker's just standing there for 20 minutes.
Oh, no, he's just beating the piss out of him.
It's a lot of beating the piss out of him.
75% wasn't even in the ring. It's in the 3-foot section between the outside of the ring and the cage. And just fucking going to town on him and beating the shit out of him. Michaels eventually gets back into the match. At one point, he decides to assault cameraman aggressively.
Yes.
Very aggressively.
To the point where they came down and unlocked the cell so that they could get the cameraman out in a stretcher. Michaels used that as a chance to escape. Taker chased him out. They ended up on top of the cell, as you do in a Hell in a Cell match.
Yes.
Although this was the first time we had ever experienced it.
So no one needed to, but they did it anyway.
Yeah. Nobody got thrown through or over. But Michaels got his ass beat on top of the cage. Then he tried to escape down. He did the old classic cartoon, I'm going to stomp on your fingers so that you fall off the side. And so he fell hanging off the side through the Spanish announce table. Madness ensued. Undertaker had the upper hand with the chair, and then it's gotta be Kane.
It's gotta be.
It's gotta be Kane. Out of nowhere, shows up the once thought to be dead baby brother of the Undertaker. And one thing that's super interesting, and I mentioned this to these guys off air earlier, is one thing I really miss is the combination of Lawler, JR, and Vince McMahon together at the announce table. The way they were able to play off each other, like, if you didn't see what was happening, if your TV was blacked out and all you had was audio, like, they did such a good job of fucking painting the picture and telling the story audibly without being able to see it even. There was just something magical about that era. But that match was just so good. The aggression of the Undertaker, and the crowd was all in for Taker at that point. And they just were motherfucking Shawn Michaels.
Equally we wanted to motherfuck Shawn Michaels, right? I think, and Mark Calloway also wanted to motherfuck Shawn Michaels.
I think everyone in the world did.
There was an awful
97, yes.
There was an awful lot of realism with wanting to fucking break Shawn Michaels open and let him bleed like a stuck pig.
There was so much blood.
That I'm sure made him feel a little good about himself, right?
He raked his face off that cage so many times.
Yeah.
And the only downside of the match for me was, so Kane gave Taker a half-ass tombstone, and he was knocked out for like 15 minutes.
Well, Shawn Michaels slowly.
slowly.
Because he's got to get his Shawn Michaels dramatic shit in.
Just bleeding all over him, but... that's my favorite Taker match.
The Hell in a Cell match, 97. And the reason why it is so good is, no disrespect to the performance involved, it had no business being that good. We're in an unproven gimmick.
That was the thing, is that there was no fucking template for how you do this. And you have to figure this out now in front of all these fucking people in pay-per-view.
And we talk about it now, like, oh yeah, Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker. Of course, they tear the fucking house down. Well, newsflash, they didn't work like that before. No. So this is the first of these two on pay-per-view in the first Hell in a Cell match at a time where the Attitude Era was now getting in full swing. So, and it's starting this Crash Course TV where between the Hart Foundation and DX and The Undertaker being the lone babyface and Austin, who, by the way, was hurt from a broken neck from SummerSlam. So your two top babyfaces, only one of them could fucking work. So it was crazy. It was definitely crazy at the time. But the match is incredible, guys. If you haven't seen it.
It's so good.
It is a masterclass in what to do with two people in a shit ton of steel link fence. Like, it is.
In a small area, because they, again, like you said, they only have like 3 feet outside of the cage to work.
And that's where they spent most of the match.
The entire fucking match is outside that.
Yes. Awesome.
And, I didn't want them to go on top of the fucking steel cage, but then also I'm glad they went on top of the steel cage. If you're going to put a fucking steel cage down, you got to go on top of it.
With a roof on it.
With a roof on it. You got to go on top of it.
And the overselling of Kane by him ripping the door off the hinges.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which were clearly loosened.
Basically, there were no hinges.
No.
So we have the match with Undertaker, Kurt Angle, and The Rock, where it's all athleticism.
Yeah,
it's all fucking wrestling. It's the kind of shit that you see in Ring of Honor.
Yeah,
right, where it's just all over the place.
Are we transitioning to another match?
Yes,
we might be.
I just have something to say about this match.
Go for it. If you'll allow it.
I will. I wasn't really transitioning, but
I wanted to give some room for the table for people to say their piece.
For 3 feet?
Yeah. So, look, I went back and watched this match, and we're talking Hell in a Cell 97, a.k.a. The best Hell in a Cell match of all time, a.k.a. the superior Hell in a Cell match, a.k.a. the other Hell in a Cell match, a.k.a. that's got to be Kane.
That's why Bad has 2 Ds in it.
And I'm not going to say a whole lot that hasn't been already said, but I really feel like something super important to make a point of here for everybody here sitting amongst us and the audience in professional wrestling. And it was really cool to watch it because I totally forgot about it. The whole concept of professional wrestling that had been kind of established for decades and decades and decades is that there's a good guy and then there's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad guy wrongs the good guy enough times by chicanery, cheating, bullshit, pulling hair, pulling tights, using brass knucks, whatever the fuck, and getting away with it enough times that there's a blow up. There's a blow off match.
Yeah, there's got to be something.
Yeah.
The whole idea is in professional wrestling is that you promote this match that people want to pay money to see that guy get his ass whipped. That's it. That's professional wrestling 101.
Yeah, sell tickets
You
for it.
really want to see
that guy earn that ass whooping, and he's going to get it
kicked out of him.
Yeah.
And to watch Shawn Michaels, whether he has issues with his drugs or whatever, he's still one of the greats of all time. Watching him sell the cell, dropping around him, to them locking him in, he looks
the look
so
of paranoia.
scared.
Yeah,
he reality is setting into this character that I can't get out of this motherfucker.
Yeah,
and that big motherfucker over there, who I beat the shit out of with a chair multiple times when I could run away, wants to kick my ass. And the feeling of joy of being a wrestling fan and going, that is it right there.
Yeah.
People pay money to watch Shawn Michaels get his ass whipped.
Also, secretly, for 3, if not 4 of us at this table, it was secretly vindication for the Montreal Screwjob.
Well, it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah,
but it will now. Yeah.
Watching it back now, we're like,
well, this match, it lost on the context of this match is to see who fights Bret Hart in Survivor Series 97.
That did not escape me when I realized, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is where this is happening.
Bret was in a flag match.
It was on a
Patriot.
But I just really wanted to really emphasize the importance of this match. It's a great match because it is truly wrestling. It is a good guy who everybody loves and adores, and there's a bad guy that everybody's like, get that motherfucker, please, for me. Yeah. Because Shawn Michaels was about as obnoxious as it could get. He was just leaning so
he was
well into that piece of shit persona.
100%.
That may or may not have been, real life leading into fiction. But the match, excellent. I'm sorry, Mac. I just really wanted to get that out of my system.
I'm happy you did. So, again, this says a lot about Mark Calloway. This is a lot about the man behind the persona. You have the athletic match, and you say what you want. Kurt Angle's maybe the most athletic, great wrestler of all time. Mm-hmm. Just physically what he was able to do. Yeah. We've seen great athletes that have never always been great wrestlers, but he had the whole package, right? And then you get that match between just Taker and Angle, which fucking grinds it to a halt, right? Yep. Then you see Taker against Michaels, where it's a fucking brawl.
It is.
So you're seeing different ways that he's interacting with people and the different ways he's able to kind of tell the story and how he's able to, not just wrestle, but take everything that you have with sports entertainment and make it fucking work. And then you kind of have, and I'm happy that we're talking about this last because I think it kind of works that way. My favorite match, which is WrestleMania 25. Now, Jones, we were fucking there. When this happened, right? Unbelievably, we had a chance to witness this live and in person. Yeah. We watched Undertaker almost break his fucking neck.
God in heaven.
Only maybe 30, 40 feet away from where we were sitting.
Yeah.
But this match kind of takes everything that Taker and Michaels is and then puts it on that pedestal of WrestleMania with the great fucking gimmick. So we're coming off a year after Shawn Michaels ended Ric Flair's career.
Yeah.
So this is the next WrestleMania after that. And, Michaels, he had that whole, if I remember correctly, that was the same time he was going through the big feud with, was it? No, it was with Jericho when he kind of slapped the wife and everything, right? So we come out of that where he is now the born-again Shawn Michaels. And we're really playing up the angelicness of Shawn Michaels at this point. So what a great fucking way as a spectacle to just counteract that by bringing the fucking Deadman. I remember sitting there, Jones, because we were right off the runway between the stage and the ring, and we see Shawn Michaels lower from the heavens.
On the boom,
right?
The entrances for that match were so good.
Yeah. And then, it comes to the ring and everything, and he's standing there, and then fucking Taker's music hits. And you can feel the fire coming off the stage where we're sitting, right? And then Taker just comes up.
Oh,
Just comes right up from the stage. And you know that at this stage, you've got the streak against Mr. WrestleMania, where both of those things are really, established.
Yeah.
You've got the pageantry of WrestleMania. You've got the, juxtaposition of the story. And then you're just going to have those two guys fucking go.
Mhm.
And a thing I like about this match and why I picked it as my favorite is because it really took into consideration everything that Undertaker was. It was the pageantry. It was the spectacle. It was the fucking, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to sit up and look at you. Oh my God, how am I going to fucking beat this guy?
Yeah.
But also, you had two of the all-time greats still able to go. And this match was, 30 minutes? Now,
Not even.
Not even 27.
it's 27. Now, about 9 of those minutes was did Taker break his neck or not, which we gotta see here.
AKA Sim Snooker, you're fired, Domino.
Right?
Yeah.
But it really, I felt, combined so many elements of what Undertaker, Mark Calloway grew into, became, what his legacy, I think, as an overall wrestler was, and was kind of put into this fucking match.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the top 5 best matches in the history of WrestleMania. Top 3, you could argue that it's the number 1, and no one.
I can't believe we fucking lucked into seeing that.
What are the chances of that?
Right.
The Shawn Michaels Undertaker feud, for the years that it transpired, from start to finish, every match was it was great. Like you said, it was a spectacle.
Yeah.
It was the pageantry of it all. But to see those guys, the way they were able to work together in the ring, constantly kicking out of each other's finishers, Undertaker sitting up after taking sweet chin music that most guys, it fucking knocks them out for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was just a great match. I mean, if you look at both of those back-to-back WrestleMania matches with Shawn Michaels, I mean, that was the draw. And the one year that it was the main event, even though there was no title on the line, it well deserved to be there.
Yeah.
I will say, and I'm not going to harp on it too much. I was there. I'm very fortunate, blessed, lucky, whatever, that I was there, and I'm glad that I got a chance to witness this match. I will say, and this is really all I'm going to say about it, because I feel like we're just going to repeat ourselves here. It is the first and only real time that I felt like the streak was in jeopardy.
True.
Honestly, it's the only time, because it's Shawn fucking Michaels.
And unlike Lesnar, we're like, he could really lose this match. It's a legit threat.
Yeah. And Undertaker, Tombstone, Shawn Michaels, his reaction to Michaels kicking out that, I think it had to have been the first time.
Yeah.
His face. Undertaker doesn't make that face.
Nope.
The look of pure shock was so good.
Yeah.
Undertaker scares everyone. He doesn't scare easy, but he was scared in that moment.
He was like, holy shit.
He was scared right there.
What do I got to do to beat this man?
Yeah.
It started as the fucking pageantry. It started as the circus. But as the match kind of went along, it just became a fucking heavyweight bout.
It did.
And
big fight.
just Ali Frazier just trading blows, trading finishers, and just doing the whole deal. And you watch how that match just kind of transitions from one thing to another.
Yep.
And it becomes such a great wrestling match.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. And you lose nothing. You lose nothing from the technical aspect, the storytelling aspect. Everything's on the line. And I mean, it really became, I think, a perfect, combination of all that.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I love sharing our favorite WrestleMania matches, but it's not just about us. We are kind, generous, giving lovers. We're
givers.
To give and let someone else give. But make sure first that there are a lot of drop cloths down. But now it's time for us to give you the opportunity. It's time to call into the show. It's time for you to join in with us and enjoy this wonderful moment. And we're going to go ahead. We hope he's ready to toss it to our first ever call-in guest on Nothin Good Live.
Oh, my.
Hello, Drew.
Hello, dear listener.
Well, am I in?
You're
You
in.
guys hear it?
That's what she
Am I
said.
in there?
Yes.
Am I in there? Yes. Can you guys
You're
hear
good.
me
What up,
okay?
dude?
Oh my God, dude. Guys, I just want to say it's an honor to be the first ever live caller on the Nothing Good Live podcast. Okay,
You are first.
This is a very proud moment for not only myself but the internet world.
Very nice.
You know, I think any Nothing Good podcast is one of the proudest moments of the internet in the last 15 years at least. Okay, I want to make sure I throw that out.
Nice. We call that a testimonial, Drew.
That's a hell of a testament. So thank you.
Even though I've been told on not live, but on previous podcasts that I look like a beef and cheddar sandwich, and that's okay, Matt. I have been frequenting Arby's a lot since that podcast, and really in kind of a self-reflection kind of way. You know, like what is it that makes Dave so hungry when he's staring at
like a market district staring at a sandwich?
It's like in Bloodsport where he's watching the reflection.
They literally asked me. They asked me in the drive-thru. They're like, "Hey, dude, you gonna order anything?" And I'm like, "I'm just staring at that beef and cheddar. I need to know what it is that makes Dave McDonald hunger for me so much." And I don't know what it is. I think it's the cheddar. Okay. All right.
Listen, Andrew, you and I have shared an airplane together. You and I both know the answer to that question.
The plane ride from heaven. That's what I call it.
Did you have a question or a comment?
Well,
oh my God!
You. Yeah. First of all, let's ask you right out of the gate before you get a chance to come in here.
Yeah.
Let's ask you
don't hijack the show.
No. What's your favorite Undertaker match, Drew?
All right. There's a lot to unpack there. Okay, because let's just remember one thing about me versus you guys, and I'm not trying to make you feel old or anything, but I don't remember wrestling without the Undertaker.
That's a good point.
Okay,
he was fair.
Yeah,
that is fair.
And honestly, one of the first ever moments, it's probably pretty young in my life, was Taker Warrior, because I was such a Warrior fan. You know, I was this little kid, 3-4 years old, running around, loving the Ultimate Warrior, and then all of a sudden, I just remember this ridiculous supernatural character just showing up and an urn that controlled him. You know, like there was just
superpowers. Yeah.
It was to me like, oh my God. And it just like encompassed this dark part of wrestling that nobody wants to acknowledge, because it was that post-Hogan, not really post-Hogan thing that was going on there. And then Taker shows up and people are getting put in the coffins, and he's fighting the Ultimate Warrior, even though he lost. That was still like, what the hell is this thing? Because the Ultimate Warrior was probably the most supernatural character I knew of at that point in my life.
That was steroids.
Anyway. Yeah,
What's your favorite fucking Undertaker match?
My favorite match.
Don't yell at the guests. Come on, man.
Setting a good precedent here for future callers.
I'm sorry.
No one's going to want to call in if you yell at them all.
I'm sorry.
Let's just we're just going to say this right now. Hold on. No, I'm going to say this right now. The only other callers you have are the people who are on the show right now. Anyway.
That is true. Hey, kayfabe. Okay?
My favorite match. All right, my favorite match. I have two. One of them is going to surprise you, okay? My first favorite match, obviously, WrestleMania 25. I don't know what it is about that fucking match, and I think that Mac really just fucking resonated it for me with everything he said about it. I think one of my favorite points of that match was the seceding match that occurred because of that. And it really put an emphasis on how important the entire storyline from those 2 years really put an emphasis on how important the streak was. That Shawn Michaels was willing to give up his career for the streak.
Career versus streak. That was a big deal.
Right. And to me that was it's not just the one match, it's both matches. Even though the first match was fucking perfect, right? I think we can all agree that was just psychology, just showmanship. That match was perfect. My second favorite match, and it's not because of the match itself, but because of what it stood for at that point in Big Evil's career and Big Evil's run to beat Big Show and A-Train by himself at WrestleMania 19. Right. Like, there was just something about that, and he didn't make it boring. It was one of those things where I remember when that WrestleMania was coming up.
Yeah.
When that WrestleMania came up, and I remember me and Noah sitting there going, hey, this is a dumb fucking Undertaker match. You know, Nathan fucking Jones. I remember us saying
why would they
that.
put
Like,
A-Train into any match?
Yeah, like at Big Show. And this is before Big Show. This is before anybody pointed out that Big Show never won a WrestleMania match, right? And when you see where all of his losses, like nobody wants to talk about that in this conversation, but that's literally like in the heat of it, because nobody's really talking about the streak at that point. Really, like the people mentioned it, but it was just kind of like he just showed up and fucking owned the Big Show and A-Train in a matter of 12 minutes, and nobody fucking even questioned it because he made it look so goddamn good. You know, like there's something about that match, and it really just like kind of solidified in everybody's mind, like nobody's gonna beat him. Nobody's gonna beat him.
I agree, and to go back, Drew, to your comments on WrestleMania 25, I think that that match. I mean, it is definitely arguably Undertaker's greatest match he's ever had.
Yeah, and if you look at there's a lot of articles and lists that have been posted by fans and publications about what are the greatest Undertaker matches of all time. That one is on every single list, whether it's at the top or in the middle, but it's never at the bottom. It's on every list for sure.
There's no way it can't be. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, you can't watch that match and not go, "No, that was some serious shit."
Yeah.
It had about everything you need to have in a
There's so much
big-time
legitimacy to it.
No, it was and here's the thing that always gets me too, is that like that match is like the godfather of everyone kicking out finishes in a WrestleMania main event, and we've done it in every single WrestleMania main event since then.
Wait, what about the Godfather?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, that's one of the Undertaker's guys, right? So, hilariously,
the entire roster is the Undertaker's hoe train. All right, let's just not forget that.
I mean, in a lot of ways too, but everyone's like, "Oh, they kick out of too many finishes." Well, you know what, motherfucker? I think if the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels could do it at WrestleMania, I think it's okay to do sometimes. Maybe a little bit of a true, but great add-ons to that. What is your favorite incarnation of the Undertaker character?
See, I'm glad you asked. See, like I've been sitting here for however long, listening to you amazing gentlemen talk, and I've been taking notes.
Almost 2 hours.
So most of what you asked me, I probably thought about at this point. My favorite incarnation, my favorite variation was the Ministry Undertaker, actually.
Ministry of Darkness.
Ministry of Darkness.
That's my favorite
which also goes,
theme song.
Which coincides with, and I'm really happy. Dave, can I just give you props that most of everything that I want to talk about, you are talking about too. So like, I don't really have to repeat most of it. The fact that like the crucifixion era, not just Stephanie McMahon, he tried to crucify every fucking buddy. But the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker. 5 minutes, but the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker. Here? Absolutely.
Can I real quick, Drew, so as we talk about this, do you realize that I've been fucking watching this motherfucker for, my entire life?
Most of our lives.
Drew or the Undertaker?
Both.
Dave.
Mainly Undertaker.
Dave, if I may.
Jesus,
just real quick.
Wait, stop. You can't double interrupt. What the fuck?
This is who we are.
Interruption. Did I never realize that the logo was just Texas? It was a T and an X.
Oh, yeah.
I never fucking realized that until this past weekend.
Real creative.
I never picked it up, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's just a T and an X."
Yeah, it's just Texas.
That's all it is.
That's where he's from.
I thought it was some like crazy like rune or something. No, it's just where he's from.
Yeah. Fantastic.
No, Drew, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say to Dave's point about how he's been watching his entire life. I remember all of us being completely surprised that Dave McDonald was a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And that day that happened, we realized that, Dave's been a a lifelong wrestling fan the entire time. So like the way I hear Dave talk about it, I still remember that day when we discovered it. It's like he came out of the wrestling closet. And
we can all agree, Drew. We can all agree that the day that we realized that, Dave leveled up in our eyes.
Yep.
Yes. Oh yeah. Without a freaking doubt. Without a freaking doubt.
Power drinking.
You just start peeling back the layers, right?
Yeah.
You know, you never know what you're going to discover.
And he just kept going until he put this fucking bandana on about 2 hours ago. And he leveled back down.
To go back to what I was saying about the ministry.
You gave me the bandana. This wouldn't even happen if it wasn't for you.
You said it was for your dog.
It will be after I'm done with it.
Truths are coming out.
So what were you saying, Drew?
To go back to what I was saying about the ministry Undertaker being very important, is it wasn't necessarily the Undertaker himself. It's what it did for a lot of wrestlers at that time, period. Like a lot of guys who weren't necessarily finding themselves in the limelight of the Attitude Era and falling under that Taker wing. And it wasn't exactly like an NWO kind of faction in the sense that, like, I mean, you wouldn't have the APA if it wasn't for Ministry of Darkness.
No,
you wouldn't have any of that. You know, like, and what Undertaker did, not only on the camera and off the camera for all those guys, like, I think that the ministry was that moment when the Undertaker was accepted, and I think it was very obvious in how it played out and projected from all of those guys, obvious that the Undertaker was the locker room leader.
Absolutely.
100%.
You know, without a doubt. And I think that goes to show in everything the Undertaker does. Even to this
I don't want to cut you off. I do want to say I think we 100% agree.
Yeah. 1,000%. Nobody here, especially Dave, is disagreeing with you at all.
Correct. Especially Dave.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much I've agreed with Dave this entire podcast.
Which is weird. And so when we address that in future episodes, we'll be sure to have Arby's and have you guys argue. Unfortunately,
we can only argue over Arby's.
Drew, shut up. Unbeknownst to us, and I feel so bad for this, but we just got the alert that our live stream is being limited to 2 hours, in which we have less than a minute remaining on our live stream. So we're going to do it. Everyone gets 5 seconds. Everyone tell me who is the most important Hall of Fame induction ever in our lifetimes. Jones, start it. Go.
It goes totally without saying that the Undertaker 100% is.
All right.
Undertaker. Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Oh.
Drew, most important
Macho
Hall of Fame
Man.
induction. Nice. Very good. I'm going to say Hulk Hogan, even though I don't like him because he's the first big star.
Fuck Hulk Hogan.
Fuck Hulk Hogan, though. Seriously, fuck him. But don't fuck you guys. We love you all so much. Here, thanks.
Hello. You see, this is where the original live recording suddenly cut out. You did not hear your handsome host say, here on Nothing Good. So now, you get me. And I get to say goodbye to you. Will I do it? Simply, unerotically? Maybe.